Welcome to the Bright Ideas Podcast, where we share bold insights and real stories for people leaders building cultures and companies that scale. I'm your host, Desiree B. Sharpe, keynote speaker and CEO of Color Vision Lab. We're the people and culture consulting firm helping creative businesses design smarter systems and build high-performing teams. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, Rachel Sutherland, Vice President of People and Operations at Respondology. If you want to scale your business without sacrificing your culture, this is the conversation for you. And if you're exploring ways to elevate your people strategy, DM us the word growth on LinkedIn for a free consultation. Rachel, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great. This is super exciting. I'm really excited to be here.
Very excited to have you. So let's just go ahead and dive in. Respondology has grown significantly since April of 2023. I would love to get started by having you share how you came to join the leadership team at Respondology and how your current role shapes, the vision. How do you help drive vision for the company?
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of how my role drives vision, I was very clear with the CEO of our company, and we worked together at the very beginning when he was bringing me on, that the people function, the people of the company would be a really, really big deal, right? That we would really pay attention to how we were going to build a culture together, that it was not going to be an afterthought. I see a lot of people in the startup space that do not bring on a people leader that early. That's really early to bring on a people leader, quite frankly. A lot of people will use maybe fractional, they'll use a PEO. They won't think that it's important to bring on someone who's really functionally thinking about that. They might use a recruiter, right? They know they need to bring people on, but they don't think about it holistically. And so the way that I have driven that from the beginning in conjunction with the leadership team is just putting that forefront out right away, right? So pulling us together at our first offsite to work through what our core values were going to be and how to push those forward for real, not just to have them be things that we put on the wall, but things that we really felt about what was already true about our company and how we wanted to continue moving forward that way. And then how we're bringing people on to really drive that and continue that and add to that, as opposed to just throwing people on a team or not having an overall organizational strategy to start with. I think that has been a really big plus for our team to be able to have that going forward.
I think that's really amazing. And you're right. Companies that are that early stage typically aren't thinking about long-term people strategy. They're focused on driving revenue and growth, which I totally understand that pressure sitting in the seat as a founder myself. But you talked a little bit about some of the workshopping that you did with the founders around identifying core values, and you said, to your point, how that shows up for real in like the employee experience, which is so important in attracting aligned talent. So what are some of those values? And if you could share maybe a couple of examples as to how they like show up in an employee's like day-to-day experience, whether it's during their onboarding process, certain things that you ask in the interview, the experience they get on their first day that speaks to the culture of the company, how you develop talent or do performance evaluations. What are some examples of how those values show up, really tangibly show up for employees?
Absolutely. Care very deeply about, and I do try in so many ways. So all those ways that you mentioned, right? Performance management, onboarding, interviewing. One of the ways I think a good example would be, so we do have specific behavioral questions that we put under each core value. One of our core values is ownership without ego, right? And so we want people to really feel like they take ownership over things, but that they're not jockeying or elbowing people out because they want a certain thing. We're all in this together. And when you work at a startup, you have to be like up, down, and sideways. You cannot just expect to do all the high level work while someone does the low level work for you or anything like that, right? And so you need to own something really from soup to nuts. And of course you can delegate, of course you have a team, but you don't, slough off any of those things, right? And so you need to be able to own that, but also understand the team dynamic behind it. So, in a interview, we might be asking people like, What kind of projects have they owned before? Like, what kind of things have they walked through the entire thing, had the idea and moved forward and kind of outside their comfort zone, right? Where they just sort of they were like, I can do this, and I'm going to confidently move forward. I'm going to do it, and bring people along, really set alignment, all of that, right? You have to have that sort of it's a proactivity, I guess, right? At the very minimal bit, but also just an innovation, right? So your brain is moving in that direction. You're not waiting for someone to explain what happens next. You're taking a look at the big picture, and wherever you can drive that forward, you're doing that. So in any seat, we really have that ability to do that here, and that's what's so great about a startup, right? You really, I'd like to say, like, the world is your oyster. But you also have to kind of grab it. You can't just sit there. You will not succeed here, right? And so you really have to be able to take that and move it forward. So, and another example of something that we're doing there in challenges that we might have in the company, even if it's, say it's on the go to market side, or say it's on the product side, or say it's any of the sides of the business, right? We might bring together people that we feel are those outside of the box thinkers from all kinds of places, right? And we might all get together and be like, okay, here's what we've got, right? Like, we need somebody's different perspective from this, right? Because we're kind of hitting a roadblock, right? And so we'll allow that growth without it doesn't matter where you sit in the company. You can bring an idea and you can have that. So I think that's one of the ways that we do it. I'll also say, I mean, my favorite value is called whistle while you work, and I really wanted to throw something in there that was fun because Desiree, like, we all work is work. Like, we're doing a job, but we could do this job many places. Do we have a good time while we're doing it? Do we really enjoy the people that we're with? Can we send a funny thing to say? Are people witty? I really do pride myself on hiring like funny people. I enjoy funny people. I think funny people typically are also intelligent, because they can come back with something witty. They can, they understand what's going on from an EQ level a lot of times too. And it can be like a dry sense, like very different senses of humor, of course. It's not a requirement. It's not something that we, a checkbox that we do, but we do have a lot of fun. And I do not know any other way to build a culture quicker than to enjoy each other, like, truly. Even when we're working, our company deals with a lot of toxic comments online. So we're also dealing with like tough subjects sometimes, right? And so we're seeing things and hearing things, hearing about toxicity, hearing about just rough things that are going on in the world. And if we're not able to come together and feel like we can lean on each other and just have a little bit of levity, even when things are tough, then it's just not some place that I want to be. And I don't think other people want to be there either. And so, yeah, I throw in jokes on interviews. I mean, not like I don't tell like a knock knock joke, but like I will try to, see if people can kind of, if they're okay with a little bit of levity. And often it will open people up and they'll kind of relax. And then you're able to see a little bit more of their actual personality rather than what they've polished and gotten ready for you in that interview. So those are a couple examples. I can definitely give more, but yeah, we really do lean on those a lot.
I love that. I think that a lot of companies have, the traditional, I guess maybe the older, larger companies have the traditional values like authenticity, communication. And when I did this exercise for my company, I too wanted to get pretty creative about how we formed our values. One of ours is work in your zone of genius. It's not as witty and as funny as the whistle while you work one. That is super funny. But I love it. It speaks to a certain kind of candidate, about what it will be like to work there on a day-to-day basis, the type of people they'll be around. So my mind went to thinking about the middle managers, the people who are leading the individual contributors at the company, and how, some strategies that you as a people leader impart on them to be able to reinforce and really carry out the values. So when you think about ownership without ego, whistle while you work, what's some training, coaching, or how do you enable middle managers to make sure that their team is experiencing these values in their day-to-day work?
It's a really good question. And I'm spending a lot of time this year on that middle management layer. Anyone who's, been built a team before, right? You kind of begin with really fairly flat, or everyone's reporting to like a leadership team person because there's just not that many people, right? And so leadership can kind of handle that. And then all of a sudden it gets too big for that. And you need to add that management layer in. There's also people who are really ready for that growth. And so that is exactly exploding right now for us, that layer. And many of those managers are brand new managers, which I think is super exciting. I love that. They are so excited to learn and like move into more of a strategic role. It's really exciting for them. And I do, of course, feel like we have a really great team. And so it's not like I don't know, they're not having a lot of tough conversations necessarily, right? Like there are some times when you're dealing with middle management where they're constantly having tough conversations. That doesn't feel like where we're at right now. Right now we're at an exciting inflection point. So how I do trainings there with them, or just kind of keep that top of mind. So one thing that we're doing this year that I felt has been really effective, I write like a weekly email where I do highlight core values. I highlight like different things that are going on with the company. And I've chosen like a core value of the quarter. So we have 5 of them. I think we'll double up on Q4, but I'm working through like a core value each quarter and really putting out there to everyone, hey, here's some things that you can do with your direct reports. You can do them yourself. Like here's an exercise that you can do as you're thinking. Last quarter was impact over intention. So meaning like, it's great. You're doing a lot of work. Everyone's working hard, but like, what are you actually making an impact on? Right. So like, how can we figure out, look at your weekly schedule, what things are actually impactful and what things maybe aren't. Right. And so here's a few exercises for that. And then I'm really leaning on these, like we're talking about it in middle manager meetings. And also I have the ability to nominate someone from the company. Everyone can nominate a colleague, but I really want to have the managers nominate someone that they work with, perhaps that's on their team, for that, like a core value of the quarter winner, right? And explain as to why they're displaying these core values, right? And so it keeps it top of mind for everyone. And they're bringing up, like, hey, here's something that we can talk about in our one on one. Like, here's some things that you're doing. I feel like your impact is really over here. You're doing a lot of work over in this section. Like, how could we change that up? So maybe you're freed from some of that work, or is that maybe we need to pivot you completely, right? So it's a way, like it provides a little bit of a framework for them to have conversations and think about things in a different way, I guess, right? Than just, maybe having a one on one where it's like, well, here's my projects. This is this. Did you get this done? But it's more like, hey, let's really focus on, does this matter today? Is this actually happening? Are you doing it at a high level? What is the level of things that are happening here? So I think with all of those things together, just bringing them top of mind. Like there's nothing like just keeping it top of mind for people to discuss it all of the time. I think that's really one of the hacks to getting people feeling like it really matters, is to think about it much more than just, once a month or once a quarter or once a year.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it kind of touches on just having a internal comms plan, an employee comms plan, and how reinforce values, make announcements, keep people, the people informed of company changes and things like that. Sometimes even that's neglected, unfortunately, in like overall organizational strategy, but it makes a lot of sense to continuously reinforce through different channels. I wanted to ask a little bit about, just some trends. So, social media moderation, that particular landscape is evolving quickly. You've touched on, the fact that you guys help manage can be pretty negative conversations online. And I only know about social media from the vantage point of like promoting my own business on LinkedIn, but also being a consumer of it. So, this will be an interesting perspective. What has changed the most about how you hire, build culture, operations over the past year. So, how has the evolving social media moderation landscape changed how you approach your people strategy, essentially?
Oh, that's really interesting. So I think, the overall space that we're in obviously is being very impacted by AI. We use AI all the time too. We're in generative AI from the very beginning. And so, we're already in that space. So we do use that very heavily. So there's a little bit of that, right? Like wanting to make sure that people coming in understand how that works, right? From an operational standpoint, are comfortable there, are feeling a little native in the AI space. I think that's something that we are definitely making sure for people coming on and as we build the team. In terms of the entire social media moderation space, I think it's important that people feel akin to the mission a little bit, right? So understanding why we do what we do, which we do have a pretty cool mission, right? Like there is something that matters to the outside world with what we do, right? Of course, we also increase, ad spend ROI for our brands and things like that, right? Like we definitely are helping businesses move forward, but that piece of moderation and that piece of just cleaning up things online, making it so that a social media manager that you might work with every day doesn't have to read those things, that kind of stuff, it really matters. And it's important for me to bring on people who care about that as well. Right. And so I don't know if that's a change in the last year, right? Like that's been something that we've wanted, but I find that it's super important for people to understand that basic mission because it's so much easier for them again to show up to work and to do their job because it matters. Every SaaS strategy, of course, B2B SaaS, or you're doing something for a business, and that matters too. But this has a little bit of a deeper mission, and that's important to us.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me, especially, within the context of the startup base and landscape. I think that job seekers who may be targeting larger organizations sometimes aren't as focused on the mission, products, services. You'd be surprised at the things that would, that attract talent to a company. But I found that when you go down, to the SMB level, it really is critical that there's an alignment between, the talent, values, and their connection to the mission if they believe in the work, especially for younger companies. So that makes a lot of sense to me. You've talked about, one thing that you're doing. You mentioned the monthly email or the weekly email that you send to highlight core values and kind of supporting middle managers. Are there any other things that you're doing in your work that you're particularly proud of, or that your team, that you're proud that your team is doing? Anything you're really excelling at?
I guess in conjunction with, the communications that I put out, I feel like our team does really excel in transparency. So our CEO does what he calls a chairlift report once a month that talks a lot about. It came from we had a ski day this spring, and we were riding up the chairlift, and we had engineers and different people asking questions across the business again, right? And something about a startup that you can know all of those things, right? Like you can know when we signed a big contract, you can know when we shipped a product, no matter where you are in the org. So he puts out a lot of communications as to, hey, this is where we are exactly. This is what our quarter goals are. This is where our stretch goals are. This is what we're doing here to everyone. So everyone is very aware of those things, right? When we make structural changes, and we have made some leadership changes in the past year, what are the reasons for those? What is the North Star that we're working towards? Where are we with those things? So it's not just this quiet kind of like, hey, we've made this change. I don't know where we are with our monthly, quarterly goals, right? And so people are kind of maybe an engineer, or there's a lot of people who aren't day to day touching those things, and so they're like, gosh, I don't know how's the business going? Like, I don't know what's going on here, right? So as much transparency as possible, I think it's just something that I don't see at every company, and that's something that I think we do really well here.
Rachel, I want to shift to talking a little bit more about your leadership journey. One of the reasons, or the main reason rather, why I started this podcast is to create a space where leaders can be vulnerable and talk about the moments that really test us. the moments that can be character defining, help us build resilience, and just teach us a lot about ourselves. I've had guests who have talked through their experience with job loss. I speak very transparently about how becoming a mother rocked my identity as a leader and is now reshaping how I show up in my work. So I want to know for you, can you share a moment where you feel that your leadership was tested and what it taught you about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had a very unconventional path to where I am now. Just a little bit of backstory. I was like in publishing for a decade. Then I took some time off to also have children, right? So parenthood was a big deal in my life and was a business owner at that time too. And so I came back into the corporate world a little bit later in life, right? Actually, when I was 40, I came back into kind of back into corporate life, having had experiences, right? Having had businesses, having had lots of things under my belt, lots of life experiences, however, not necessarily a resume, right? And so I actually started pretty entry level at that time. And that was really a little bit tough for me to start there, but I threw myself into it, continued to grow. And I had some amazing mentors and people who saw things in me and were able to give me things that I would not have had other places, right? So that building relationships, all of those kind of things, right? So people who invested in me and really mentored me. That was amazing. But I will say that the taking the leap to come to Respondology full time, I had a really great gig going on at the holding company. I loved all the people I worked with. I was very comfortable there. I had a great CEO at that time too that I worked with very closely. She and I are still very good friends. But it was a really hard decision for me to make the jump, even though I loved this team too. But I was back and forth as to number one, well, actually, honestly, like whether I could do the job a little bit, right? Like I had a little bit of, I think I can do this, but also this is comfortable over here, right? Like I know I can do this. And, I know these people and this is going to stretch me and I'm going to have to show up in new ways. I'm going to be looked at as a subject matter expert on things that maybe I don't know yet, and I'm going to have to go and find those things out, and I'm going to have to still, charge forward and hope that some of the things that I think are going to work. Like I don't know, and so making that leap was really. It was tough. People didn't want me to leave the other job either. There was a lot of relational things that I had to navigate, all of that. And so I think that really tested me. And, then I was able to, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work. Right. And it was a new person that I was working super closely with. Right. I knew the CEO of Respondology, but I had never worked just for him. Right. And so it's a little bit of a leap. So I think that has taught me a lot about making those kind of leaps and going, pushing towards that uncomfortable thing, which I think people talk about a lot. But when you face it, it's really hard. It's not an easy jump, and you have to face a lot of your own demons of, do I have enough experience for this? Do I really know what I'm doing? What if I fail here? Where do I go from there? So I look back on that as a really big turning point for me. And it's been really, really amazing again on this side. And I think that has to do with a lot of people, still mentors that I have, right? And being in alignment with the founders here makes a really huge difference. And their faith in me makes a really huge difference too.
I know that so many people can relate to that, especially women. What you were talking about is imposter syndrome, really. And I've found that it shows up, mostly in places, elevated spaces, spaces to your point that stretch you, where you feel like you don't have all the answers. And I can't remember, it's like a very overused fact, but women feel like they have to meet 100% of the qualifications for a job, whereas men typically will throw their hat in the ring with like 50% or whatever, and they don't think twice about it. And it's just crazy how we are so hypercritical of ourselves. And then to add the layer in of being a dedicated mother and how that can sometimes be perceived in the workplace. Sometimes people perceive that as a weakness, when really motherhood makes you sharper, more dynamic, more focused. You can, it just builds skills that you cannot get anywhere else. That's my experience. But I think that there's a lot to be said about just leaving that comfort zone and taking a leap of faith because I share when I speak to people, especially online on my LinkedIn channel, really the best opportunities, those purpose aligned breakthroughs that really just root you in purpose are on the other side of those big, scary decisions. And so I would love to dig a little bit deeper into your thought process when you re entered the workforce. You said you were 40, you were kind of starting out, and you said in an entry level role, there's so much there. Humbling yourself to be okay with taking a lower level role that you're probably overqualified for. Having this growth mindset, knowing like this is a stepping stone into bigger opportunities and to now be a leader at a successful startup. Tell me, what were you thinking? How did you feel? What mindset gremlins did you have to work through to make that decision?
Well, honestly, to be frank, we had a little bit of a life change in our family, and I knew I needed to do this. So that wasn't a hard decision that I knew I needed to go back. But you're exactly right that taking a role, I wanted to find a place where I felt like that was a possibility that I could grow, right? But again, another leap of faith. And I think there's a both and to that where you feel sure I might be overqualified for some of these things, but I'm going to like knock it out of the park, right? Like I'm going to do as well as I could possibly do with this and not feel like it's beneath me in any way because honestly, no job is beneath. I mean, I do all kinds of again, like very, minor tasks at any time and I actually think that those people are the best people to work with too, right? Like I don't want to get to a point where I'm like, well, I'm above that. I'm not going to do that anymore. Or right, if it needs to be done, like I'm going to roll up my sleeves and do it. And so like I wanted to do the best at whatever that was, whether it was literally like a breakfast that we were having or whatever it was. And then I went into it with exactly what you said, like a growth and learning mindset. So I was like, who can I meet and have them explain what they do, right? And really like invest in people and meet them, have them also mentor me perhaps or just like be my friend, right? Like what's going on over here, like understanding that entirety of the business and leaning in that way, I think is that's the advice that I would give anyone, right? Like wherever they are at in a company and it's startups, it's easier because you are so close to so many people. And so you can figure out what's going on. You can maybe fill a gap even. Again, I know this has been said a million times, but like do something for your manager that they don't want to do anymore, right? Like the more that you can take off their plate and move forward. Like I leaned into all of those things as much as I could and did them as well as I could without any like I guess expectation, right? Because honestly, I didn't have the background necessarily, right? And so I also required a little bit of luck and people, choosing me and seeing what I had to offer and giving me an opportunity. So I would never have been here without the opportunities that people offered to me as well. So it's a combination of working really hard and those people who see something in you and I think it's important then to return the favor and try to see things in other people and elevate them whenever possible.
Sponsorship, advocacy, so important in the workplace. I could not agree more. What are some of your top areas of focus or KPIs or just what are you measuring or building for the next quarter or so? What are your areas of priority?
That's a really good question. So, operationally, we are leaning in as much as we can to AI, which you hear about everywhere you go. And so we're working on some ways to measure that and measure usability across all of our teams and who's adapting to that and who needs a little help and how much we're using that on a daily basis. There's something that in the startup world is important, which is actually is important all the time, but in the startup world, it's a KPI that we lean on a lot, which is that ARR per head count. So, like how are we benchmarking in the space on how many people we have as to how much ARR we have. So we've always been a very sustainable hire. I think that's really important to me. So we've never had to have a round of layoffs or anything like that, right? So we feel a little pain sometimes before we bring on another person because we want to make sure that that job is really there and we really have the space for it and we have the budget for it, all of those things. So we tend to be in a good spot with that ARR to headcount, but how can we lean in a little bit to more of that? That's something that I look at closely and that we measure closely, even as we do little spurts of growth to roll out a new product or different things like that, where we know that that's going to dip a little bit before it gets better. So paying attention to that a lot and just our AI adoption across the company.
That's amazing, Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing that and your transparency just around goals and just focus areas for the upcoming quarter. I like to wrap up all of my conversations with my guests by asking them what their one bright idea is. A bright idea could be a mindset shift, a strategy, a tool, a podcast, whatever, something that is making a positive difference for you as a leader or for your team. So, what would be your one bright idea?
So, the thing that comes to mind for me this year actually is it's a little bit of a mindset shift for me. And that is that like your life is a little bit longer than you think. You don't have to worry that you're behind, right? Like I have had multiple reinventions of myself. You mentioned that you just became a mother, right? Like that's an entire reinvention of yourself. I'm sure started, you didn't always work for yourself. You didn't always have this business, right? So these continual reinventions, I think that when I thought about being the age that I am now, when I was younger, I thought it was old and that my life would be, fairly set and, I wouldn't be doing any new things. Right. And so the mindset shift of there's a lot of time in your life to do a lot of different things. And, if the time is for you to be really leaning into your family and doing more mothering things, right? Like you do have the opportunity, like it's not going to pass you by, right? Like there are choices that you make. And so it's been a mindset shift for me, as I feel like that is something that I didn't hear. I never heard that as a young person. In fact, it was the opposite, right? It was like, hurry up. You're behind. You better like have your kids. You better have a career. You better have all these things and you're going to run out of time. And yeah, I mean, sure, life is short too, right? Like, yes, I have kids going to college, right? Like things do go fast, but it's time to reinvent yourself. And I think, again, as women, we do that maybe more than anyone else. And I would just encourage you to do it. If you are in a space where you're thinking like, it's too late for me for X, it's not too late. Like, it's not too late.
I love that so much. And if anything, to me, it feels like it gets better. My 30s definitely have been much better than my 20s by a long shot. And I think that it will continue to get better as you learn more, connect more, and care a little bit less. To be honest. So I appreciate that reminder, and I'm sure that it will resonate with some of the other listeners in our audience. Rachel, what a great conversation. I so appreciate your time today and for you sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. If there are other leaders in the audience who might want to connect with you or learn more about Respondology, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to connect with anyone on LinkedIn. You can also find more about our company at respondology.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thanks for tuning in to Bright Ideas. If today's episode gave you something to think about, here's your next step. DM me the word growth on LinkedIn to start a conversation about how we can help you scale smarter. And if you're a founder, CEO, or senior talent leader with a story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out about joining me on a future episode. And if you don't want to miss future conversations, be sure to follow the show, leave a quick rating, and download your favorite episodes to take them on the go. Your support helps more leaders discover bright ideas. Until next time, be bold, be resilient, be sharp. I'm Desiree B. Sharpe.